Ukraine, Russia is the headlines which we have seen in the previous week, and is a war inevitable further becomes a big question. We have got several answers by several other news channels, but let's look at how did this start and where is it marching towards. Viewers, if this is the first time you're watching this video on our and your channel, then do subscribe, hit the bell icon and support the new generation, the next generation journalism. Now let me start with the news which is coming up from the ground reports of Ukraine and Russia border. The latest satellite images seem to tell us the expanding Russia deployment across the border. Attack helicopter, fighter jets, drones, missiles and everything to launch an offensive is ready near the borders. The reports also say that there are around 1 lakh plus troops deployed near Ukraine. It seems massive. But how did all this start? From when did it start, and how did USSR collapse into many other countries, one being Russia in 1991? All these and more in this edition, and I welcome you all to this wonderful, packed and an informative edition of D.Informative, and I am Sricharan. All these started in 1917, and I feel that this was an era of revolutions, wars and conflicts. And that's when in Russia they started a new revolution. Tsars were ruling Russia then. People had several problems, but rulers were deaf to these problems, to these people, and had luxuries in their hand. People are facing a lot of difficulties, so let's bring socialism, is what Lenin said. Lakhs of people were happy and satisfied with Lenin and stood strong with him. This is when in 1917 Russia Revolution came into existence. Many other provinces and small neighboring countries came in support of this new revolution and called themselves to be a proud part of Soviet Union Russia. This was when both communalism and USSR was introduced. People, the citizens, were satisfied and overwhelmed with the thoughts of communalism. Better to say that the thoughts of Lenin gathered masses and thus led to a large crowd cheering for Lenin. But within few years, that is in 1924, Lenin passed away, leaving a vacuum to be filled. That was when a new leader came named Stalin. But filling the vacuum of Lenin's demise was not just difficult, but far from reach. Days, months and years passed. The fear and anger amongst the people grew. Why? It was because Stalin was dictator, and whoever spoke against him were made slaves. From 1924 to 1953, Stalin governed the nation. Amidst all these happenings, Second World War was in the limelight. That was when clashes erupted between US and USSR. Why was USSR so important could be a question in your mind. For sure, USSR was important because of the financial stability and land capability. If I have to say that with proof, then the land of USSR was around 2,24 lakh square kilometers. There were different cultures, religions, ethnic groups, and it was estimated that there were around 100 plus nationalists. This was also when USSR and US Cold War just began. USSR clearly understood that if they had to stand above US or compete with US, they had to strengthen their army. During Stalin's governance, there were many who opposed the way he ruled and communalism. The voice for this grew much higher after Stalin's demise. The governments which came afterwards were not strong with communalism, but they had their own thoughts. Their main focus was on increasing and strengthening the army. They spent a lot of finance in it. Nuclear weapons came into existence. But as the governments looked at strengthening army, they literally forgot the financial crisis which had already started. The financial crisis had another reason too, which is not being mentioned by any others. We observed this point keenly and have brought it before you viewers. If you look at Saudi Arabia exporting oil and petroleum products, they increased in late 1980s and 1990 until 1991. How did this affect USSR? USSR used to export a large amount of oil and petroleum, and they were 70 to 80% financially dependent on this oil and refinery products. But once Saudi started exporting a large amount, this led to a decrease in the prices of oil and petroleum, in turn affecting USSR on a financial note. Now let's go a bit forward, viewers, and land in 1985. Gorbachev was Russia's leader. He was a part of a strong communist party, but when he studied the history and the financial crisis in his nation, he came to few policies and conclusions. He initiated something called glasnost. What is this? This is a policy or a practice where the government can consult the people and people too have the right to give their opinion or views. Second policy introduced by him was perestroika. This meant reconstructing political and economic policies. People and he himself thought that this would help USSR reunite with no more economic crisis, but many historians are of an opinion that these policies hastened the collapse of USSR. His own political party did not support him. Cold War was waged on the other hand. People dying with financial crisis became a major point. The war between Afghanistan and USSR pushed the country into the ocean of financial crisis. Ethnic groups started their own protests that demanding their leaders to be represented, and that is when Baltic places, which are considered to be 3 in number, came out of USSR and called itself a new country. That's when USSR started collapsing, viewers. In the same way, Georgia came out and called to be a country. The same continued, and next 15 new countries were formed, but USSR collapsed. Then came Russia and Ukraine as 2 different countries among the 15. Ukraine inherited the nuclear part of USSR with 176 intercontinental ballistic missiles, 1,249 nuclear warheads, 700 nuclear-tipped missiles, etc. But they exchanged all these in 1994. In exchange, Moscow guaranteed Ukraine's security. It's now cut to November 2013, where Viktor Yanukovych was the president with a certificate of corruption and pro-Moscow feeling. In 2013, he rejected a European Union trade, that's EU trade deal. Instead, Yanukovych decided to take $15 billion bailout from Russia. Many Ukrainians felt like being sold to Moscow, and the protests broke out. Russia supported the president, whereas West supported the protesters. In February 2014, Yanukovych's government was brought down. The minority in East Ukraine felt neglected, and Russians were angry, and hence Moscow annexed Crimea. Why Crimea? Because let's go back again in history, viewers, and look at 1954, where Nikita Khrushchev transferred Crimea from Russia to Ukraine. In 2014, Russian army began seizing government buildings. On 16th March 2014, Crimeans voted to join Russia. The focus now shifted to eastern Ukraine, where separatists began seizing territory in eastern Ukraine. Ukraine did not attack, but when the Malaysia airline flight carrying 298 passengers was shot on July 17, 2014, Ukraine started the attack. Thus, Russia stood with the separatists and launched a counter-attack. Talks between Russia, Ukraine and West was then followed. They resulted in Minsk Agreement, where ceasefire and military withdrawal was agreed, and Ukraine agreed for elections in rebel-held areas. Now, after 8 long years, the attack, conflicts, war situations are back. What do you feel about it, viewers? Do comment it, and if you like this attempt, then subscribe, hit the bell icon, support this new generation journalism, viewers. Thank you for watching me. Until the next time I meet you all, signing off, Sricharan. Thank you, viewers. Thank you for watching me.